My guest this week is Jerry Casale. Jerry is a founding member of DEVO, a songwriter, and a music video director. With DEVO, he was one of the main lyricists and one of the two composers of the band. Casale is also a groundbreaking video director for bands like The Cars, Foo Fighters, Soundgarden, Rush, Perfect Circle, and others. And at the age of 75, Casale continues to redefine the possibilities of audio-visual entertainment. Casale's new music video was not shot on film, and it's not traditional video either. Instead, he's using 4DView's proprietary volumetric capture system, utilizing 32 digital scanning cameras, instantaneously transforming reality into 360 virtual CG. And it is my great pleasure to welcome to Revolutions Per Movie, one of my heroes, Jerry Casale. Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. People who listen to the podcast obviously know that DEVO were a total lightning bolt to my head. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about your legacy of film and video work, especially because even though the albums were resonating with me and the live shows were incredible, for many of us, seeing what you were making in film was often our introduction to DEVO. And I just had a couple questions before we get to your first film. When you were in Akron performing, driving audiences out of the room and making 4-track music, did you have a film in mind? Did you feel like that was where you were going with it? Or what was the purpose of making In the Beginning Was the End?
It was conceptually part of the origins of DEVO from the beginning. We knew what we wanted to do. It was always a matter of having the opportunity to do it. DEVO never had a problem with ideas, never had a problem with concepts. It was the opportunity to execute those ideas. Where would the funding go? Where would the cooperation from people, technically go? Like, how could you do this? It was very tough in Ohio. And it was very tough with the technology of the time. It wasn't easy like now. So on that first film, I had to work for like half a year in a business that I created, brought Mark into, called Unit Services. And what we did was we did screen printing and rubber stamps and stickers and, like branding for businesses, right?
Right.
And we scraped together like $3,000. And I had been good friends with Chuck Statler, my collaborator, since 1968 when I met him at Kent State University. And he was seeing this guy, Richard Myers, who was a one-man film department. He was a art filmmaker who started an actual film department at Kent State University. And Chuck, from Akron, Ohio, had been working in industrial films. He learned to make films from doing industrials for like tire companies, right? And but he had a great aesthetic, and we became really tight friends starting in 1968. And he had a 16 millimeter, I think a Bolex camera. And he started, basically because of his knowledge, technically, he started teaching me about how films were made. I was like a film fanatic. I was I was in, what would you call it? Like, an acolyte, a convert. And I lived for films, and I would go to the art movie houses, and we would see films together, Chuck and I. So we started talking about this early on when DEVO started happening. Chuck was still living in Akron, and we talked about the visual component of DEVO. So that film, The Truth About De-Evolution, was something we were like conjuring up like a year and a half before it happened. But right. It wasn't until this Unit Services that Mark and I created it, and to make the money, that we could fork over $3,000, which in 1976 was a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. You're making this thing kind of in the void. Was there anything that you could pull in as a reference?
Yeah, I think there was. I think there was, and that had a lot to do with this guy Richard Myers at Kent State University, who was bringing in all these art films from New York City and from Berkeley, like the Kuchar brothers,
Sure.
and this film Babbo 73 with Sandy Nelson. And so we were seeing these underground movies, and he was also screening a lot of movies that became part of the book Psychotronic, right? And so they were flawed B art movies, low budget, that were incredible in their own way. You're right.
Right.
If I mean, they were transgressive. They were unfiltered. That's what was wonderful about them. They were honest, even if they were offensive. They were honest, and we just ate that up. As people who abhorred mainstream culture and the right wing swing that led up to the killings at Kent State, May 1970, the Vietnam War, and so on, where that all looks innocent now compared to where we are, right?
Right.
These were the antecedents of de-evolution. And I think when we all we were trying to do is make a little biographical art film that, as you said, messaged the worldview that we were formulating at that time, trying to make at that time, that we had then deemed, labeled de-evolution. And that's a whole other story about how that came about academically. But the visual component that the 10-minute film, The Truth About De-Evolution, Now It Can Be Told, that was the idea. Like, show the world what you're thinking, right? And have these songs that are proof of concept. So that weird, whack, mutated, devolved, secret agent one, right?
Yeah.
That was the antecedent to Satisfaction.
How soon were you starting to play this before you were going on stage?
Well, we tried to do that from the very beginning, and we would, take a stupid, those projector screens that unfolded, right? And the three-legged stand, and project from the back of the house, and the house was maybe enough for 200 people max, right?
Right.
There were only 50 people there. We would play that on a screen before we came on stage.
But it became kind of the calling card for you, right? A lot of people discovered DEVO from this film making the rounds. Is that correct?
I think so, because what happened was Chuck entered the film in the Ann Arbor Film Festival for 1976, and it managed to win some prize as a comedy short.
Oh, wow.
Well, which is perfect, right? Because how else could people digest this except to think
Absolutely.
It was comedy?
Right.
And at first I was so offended, like, what? Comedy short, right?
Right.
And then it made the rounds, because back then independent film houses were burgeoning. They were big. And so the Ann Arbor Film Festival, they would take the core group of the award winners and travel it across the United States into all the art film houses in every major city. And it was Kip Cohen of A&M Records that saw The Truth About De-Evolution, our 10-minute debut film, at the Fox Theater in Venice, California.
Wow.
Right. And then so he started trying to find out how to contact us. And my good friend that I had been the best friends with since 1966, John Zabrucki, who was an incredible artist, incredible designer, unbelievable sculptor, he had left Ohio and started a props company in LA called Modern Props. And he had gotten some of the first commissions on science fiction films, even Roger Corman low budget ones. and he was creating all the set design for those movies. And he met this guy, Paul Zacca, who was best friends with Kip Cohen of A&M Records. And so he gave him our contact information and a video copy of the movie Kip had seen and a single of Mongoloid Backed with Jocko Homo. That's the way the original single was.
Right.
And so Kip was able to call me. And Kip asked us to come out to LA to showcase because he had signed the tubes to A&M Records.
Okay.
So that's what happened. And he offered us $2,000 big dollars. And we drove out in a van to LA and we showcased at the Starwood Theater.
Right.
And he only showed up for about the last 3 songs and then left before we could talk to him. Yeah.
I mean, did Ohio ever end up embracing DEVO at some point?
Yes, at some point, yes. Or late. I would say it wasn't until 81.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of incredible because, when I was listening to DEVO, I was just like obsessed with you being from Ohio, this place that I knew nothing about, being in Portland, Oregon, and then realizing that as much as the mythology was about Ohio and the band, it was a very short period.
It only seemed short.
Okay.
You understand that we started and first performance was 1973, and we spent 4 years of boot camp in basements and garages. And so when we broke on the scene, it's so typical of how this stuff works. The media likes to present people as if they were just born like the Big Bang, like nothing existed and then this happened, right? And people believe the media hype. And in reality, you're working your ass off and every day wondering if you'll ever get out of the basement and feeling like giving up every other week. And so by the time we became visible, we had honed our act. We were fully formed. We had the whole idea. We had the talking points that we believed in. We had the presentation. We could play well. We had the songs.
Yeah.
But that took 4 years. And this was going on concurrently with people in big city scenes like the Talking Heads and Patti Smith and television and, but we were not in that media center, right? We were operating in oblivion. So we were thinking the same things these people were in our own way, just like Kraftwerk, right?
Right.
Because that's how things work in reality. It's like the 100th monkey, right? On the planet, there are new ideas that pop up, new concepts that pop up because of the human brain. And if it happens one place, it's happening many places.
Right.
For you to not think so is stupid. So like Portland, Oregon, that's another great example, right? I mean, another outpost of brilliant people that were disenfranchised, outsider, not counted in, who were really smart, really innovative, really creative, and just disenfranchised. And we know that in these kind of cities, originality is not respected. You're the butt of jokes. You are, the receiver of venom because they don't want that.
Right.
They want you to toe the line. They want you to do what's being done. They do not value originality.
No, it's amazing going back through, interviews of DEVO over and over again. I don't know how you were so patient with being asked the most ludicrous, unintelligent questions. And it wasn't even they didn't understand what you were doing. They were really threatened by it.
Well, yeah.
And the fact is, as a kid, this has come up many times on the podcast. DEVO was a negative word. It was an attack word on a lot of kids that loved the band, but it was also the first band that gave me a chip on my shoulder where I was like, yeah, I'm different. I listen to different things. I respond to images of a man drinking a milkshake on an exercise belt machine and with teeny bopper screening at it. For some reason, that is making me all tingly and weird. Those things made me feel different.
Oh, because we let you laugh at the pain.
Exactly. And it was a really painful existence.
You too.
Was it ever hard to get everyone in the band to be into the same mythology and what you wanted to say with de-evolution?
Well, luckily it was two sets of brothers.
Right.
It wasn't that hard because we grew up with the same experiences and the same trauma.
Right.
And there was a shorthand there. We understood each other. We were all outsiders, right?
Right.
I mean, it's very similar to the current LGBTQ community. I mean, we felt totally disenfranchised. Although we weren't alienated, we felt more like aliens. We just thought, God, humans are stupid. God, they're retro. Jesus, they're flawed. And they're bound to do evil because evil seems to prevail. And we felt like Martians in a spaceship looking at the planet, you know, with a video camera, like watching, observing.
Right.
That's really how disengaged we were. We felt that separation. But that's what drove the aesthetic.
Yeah.
And there was satire and there was biting humor because obviously if you don't do that, where's that going to lead you? You're going to become a homicidal maniac, right?
Totally. Well, then the next video you make is when you're on a major label at this point. Satisfaction is the next video.
Right.
How was it being on a label? Did they let you do whatever you want? Did they understand it?
That's a multiple question. The first answer to the first part is, did they let you do what you want? Yes. The second answer is no, they didn't understand it, and that's why they were letting us do what we wanted. And that's what we didn't understand. What they thought was, these guys are fucked up weirdos, but they got these big crowds coming to see them. Right. And they got all these fans that are obsessive. So we don't want to miss out. Maybe we should sign them, right? We don't get it, but we'll give them enough rope to hang themselves. Like maybe they've got something right and we can make money. So what the problem became is when they thought they understood it.
Oh, yeah.
That's when they didn't want you to do what you wanted.
Wow.
Because instead of being 2 steps ahead of them, like all the great groups in history, like David Bowie, like the Beatles, like the Rolling Stones, like Roxy Music, when they don't get it yet, they're just giving you the red carpet.
Right.
When they think they got it, now they want the formula. Like, let's have another whippet.
Right.
Why are you doing this? Right. And that's interesting. You know, if you fail to stay 2 steps ahead, which is inevitable.
What was it like making Satisfaction after the first, short film?
It was fun. It was exciting. We had a little more money per minute than we had on the first film because we were only making like a 3-minute song, and we had $5,000.
Right.
As opposed to $3,000 for 10 minutes, we had $5,000 for 3 minutes.
Right. And I'm assuming most of that did not go to General Boy. What was it like directing Robert Mothersbaugh in these films?
Fantastic. He had no idea what was going on. I mean, he was in reality that paternalistic, like bloviating character that like, what's the film? Team America, like Matt Parker and Tracy. Yeah. They parody this early 60s kind of patriarchal educational film and political film where these men pontificate, right? General Boy was real. He had this company in Cuyahoga Falls called Great Falls Employment, where he figured out he could take all these people that had screwed up through alcoholism or misdemeanors or, problems with the law, and he would find them jobs and garnish their wages. But yet he spun it like he was, a savior.
Right.
And he talked just like you see him talking. So I'd give him the copy and he would just deliver it without understanding a word of it.
It's amazing.
It's the ultimate thing you want, right? It's ultimate thing you want.
One of my favorite things, and I'm assuming you wrote it, was on the Men Who Make the Music VHS, which I want to talk about next. But he says, artists and performers are usually good-looking guys and gals who couldn't hold a real job. Entertainment is sometimes the excuse by which these people perpetuate their selfish hoax. I ask all of you to join DEVO's efforts to correct this situation from the inside out. And I was like 12 or 13, and I was like, whoa, like it was.
You're making me laugh.
So cutting and true and so funny.
Yeah.
His delivery, you're right, is brilliant.
Yeah. And he had no idea. But because of who he was, it was convincing. And of course, I was writing things where you're attacking yourself on purpose, right? You're self-aware enough to know that oftentimes the pretense of the creative person is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. And so I was writing from always the point of view of kind of conservative, right-wing religious people that we were surrounded by, who hated creative people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was clearly, yes, satire, parody. And I like to think I was mildly funny in my copy. And
it's brilliant.
His delivery was perfect. It was just
and even when you'd go see you live, you'd make things specifically for the tour, and he'd be introducing you to the show and showing you what not to do, and I'm there, with my cousins, and like I'm seeing like my first vibrator show up on the screen, and not, I'm just like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. But I just thought it was such a great choice to have him. So when Duty Now for the Future came out, and the inner sleeve, when this came out, I had no idea what this meant. It said, this is still from The Men Who Make the Music, a DEVO documentary videotape.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, included in DEVO Vision, a compilation of DEVO's films and videotapes available through Time Life video cassettes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what's a video cassette?
Yeah.
What's going on? This is something, it was so abstract. Can you tell me a bit about what it was like to make a long form situation for like a new technology like this?
Well, it was a tip of the iceberg. I wanted to make an actual film, mm-hmm. pounding away, trying to, and everybody went, you can imagine the brick wall I hit in Hollywood with the business. Like, what? You want to do what? What's the plot? What? Oh, that's stupid. Just make records and play. Shut up. Right.
Right.
So when Time Life came along, willing to put out cassettes on video of compilations, that was okay. That was our only outlet. So at least I could take what we had done, create some interstitial play line that run, some through line.
Those are amazing, Jerry, too.
Did it all tangentially and make it a program worth watching, which it was worth watching. And this was when this actually was marketable. In other words, before MTV came along, videos mattered. Videos were actionable commercially, and then they made it worthless, right? Nobody's going to buy any after MTV. You're not going to buy video,
right?
You're getting it free, but Time Life was ahead of their time, and I think Blondie had Eat to the Beat,
Right. Okay. I remember that.
Yeah, which, I was bummed because they put that out and was like, this isn't really anything except just a cynical kind of compilation. There's no bigger idea here, right?
Yeah, it was amazing watching it. I mean, I'm believing there's a Club Devo, right? I'm
There
believing that
was.
there's yeah, and I was believing there's like a voice stress analyzer, you know. I and
Well, there was an actual piece of technology, but not what you saw in the film. But yeah,
right. So, so much of the interstitial stuff is about, Rod Reuter and Big Daddy
yeah.
Know It All being like, their spring fashions make me sick, get them back into yellow outfits and, meetings and why can't you be like this band? And you're like, well, I guess we like ideas. How much of this was based on like real life meetings that you were having in the industry?
The Rod Reuter character, I didn't write one line of his dialogue. All I did was hear it in our meetings with record company A&R men, with promoters, and with agents. And I amalgamated it into this one nefarious character with a monopolistic record company, because that's at the time even Devo was signed. The trend I could see was that ultimately there'd be one record company. It was already headed that way. So
Right.
I would just go home after these horrible meetings and write down everything I'd heard. And then I'd put it in Rod Reuter's mouth.
Amazing.
And I guarantee you, everything you heard him say was what I heard.
Wow. Did the tape get postponed? Because this was advertised in 79.
I think at the end of 79, you were able to find it, but I mean, not easily. That
Right.
the distribution of these Time Life things wasn't like boom in every record store, unfortunately.
Right.
I mean, that's the unfortunate thing about it being ahead of your time. It's not just pushback because of your ideas and your originality. It's technology and distribution. And so we thought that, oh, Time Life's going to put this everywhere and everybody's going to know and
Right.
make money. It's like, no.
Well, leading into freedom of choice and new traditionals, you're starting to make, 3 videos, a record. Were you starting to write music more with visuals in mind?
Well, actually, to be honest, Devo always wrote ideas for music with visuals in mind. That was, again, a part and parcel to the multimedia concept. What you see is such a tiny tip of the iceberg compared to what our what would you call it, pretensions and vision. We saw things that we never got to do when we were writing in the beginning, even like songs like Jocko Homo and
Right.
Smart Patrol. We saw the movie, but we never got to do the movie. And I got close to doing the movie finally twice, and it was so disheartening each time. The first time,
Oh,
Bill Friedkin, famous director,
wow.
yes, yeah, The Exorcist, right? Whatever. He was teaching at UCLA, and his students turned him on to Devo, and he flipped out. He loved Devo. He called Elliot Roberts, our manager, and wanted to meet Mark and I in 1980. And he took us to this old school Hollywood star hangout called Perino's. This would be like the Spago back then. And he had just made film with Al Pacino as the undercover guy that goes
Cruising.
cruising.
Yeah.
So he had, at the time, he had a 3-picture deal. Besides his own directing, he had a 3-picture deal with Warner Brothers where he could pick any 3 pictures he wanted to make, low budget, and they'd let him make them as a producer,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
And he had heard we had a movie idea. So I did have this 14-page treatment. I give it to him. We meet at Perino's. He's waxing poetic and loving it, right? And he starts talking about shooting Cruising and how he's so distraught over the horrid compromises he's had to make to put it out when what he shot was so real and hardcore. And he starts telling Mark and I, because that's who's there, Mark Mothersbaugh and I, he starts telling Mark and I about these hardcore scenes at these gay clubs like the Anvil and something else. And he's going, oh, yeah, I got scenes where you can see the knuckles in the other guy's belly of he's being fist fucked in a sling. And they made me take it all out. Even though you just see the knuckles in the belly. And we're like, we realize how Midwestern we are. We're like, oh, woo. We're like Bill and Ted. Oh, I don't know.
Right.
You guys want to come back to my house and see this? I got it all. We cut it all out. You want to see it? It's like, I don't know. And, you know, and maybe one of my big regrets is I didn't go. We didn't go. I realized how middle class I was. We thought we were such heavy, transgressive artists that could take anything. And it's like, okay, this guy, he did it. Right. But then he loved the treatment. He loved the idea. He thought it was crazy good. And then he turned it over to his agent, Tony Fantozzi. And
it's a good name.
Tony Fantozzi. I know. It's all a movie. Everything out it is a movie. Whether it's a movie or not, they're in the movie.
Right.
And the industry is the movie. And Tony Fantozzi starts going, Jerry, this is schmuck bait.
Schmuck bait?
Schmuck bait. What are you trying to sell me here? This is schmuck bait. I mean, my guy, he's got 3 movies. He can't blow it on schmuck bait.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just done?
Yeah, after a while.
Yeah.
I even got Tom Pollock involved, who went on to be one of the most important movie lawyers and agents in the 80s and 90s, huge films. And he tried to like redirect Tony a little bit. We had contracts and everything, and it torpedoed.
When was the second time that you almost got the film made?
It was when Francis Ford Coppola had his studios in Hollywood when he was making One from the Heart, Zoetrope. And he was friends with, Roman, his son, was friends with these guys that I was friends with, Steve and Doug Martin, this twin duo. And Steve was a budding writer-producer. And they said, bring us a project. Steve loved my idea. He brought it in. As long as he could co-write with me, he was going to. And so we were given an office on the lot of Zoetrope when they were making One from the Heart, and we started working on it. And I think this is it. I mean, fucking Francis Coppola and Roman.
Absolutely.
Roman. This is it, right? I get to meet Roman, and then I start driving up to Napa Valley and meeting him at his house, his father's house, in this beautiful Victorian place in Oakville, surrounded by Nebo Coppola vineyards, and with these porches that are like 12 feet deep on 3 sides of the house, built 100 years ago. I think this is it, where it's happening, right? And then Zoetrope implodes, and all the projects they're going to turn around.
Yeah. So was it a similar thing to The Men Who Make the Music in terms of some performance, storytelling?
No, it was a full film.
It's going to be okay. Wow.
Full film. It was basically what would you call now an Avatar or something? It DEVO, but it was the Smart Patrol. It was not DEVO, but it was DEVO, and and they're in a kind of alternate retro future world, like an alternate reality in the near future, which was a sci-fi satire where there was and this is really, I wrote this in 1981. There's a disease. We didn't have the word pandemic, but there's a plague, and it's called osteobucomyelitis, and it doesn't kill you, but it turns you into a gelatinous mass. So you need all these universal healthcare products from the monopolistic universal healthcare, which is like the AMA except worse. And so they're very expensive, and there's pills. There's the universal walker, so you can still walk with servo mechanisms attached to your body. Yeah, and you can still drive this car, which is pretty much like the Apple Pod car, way ahead, right? And so that's the world you live in, right? And then there's this guy, and we had Tim Leary as the actor.
Of course.
And he's a member of Lifeforms Unlimited. And Lifeforms Unlimited is a recombinant DNA lab that finds a really cheap, easy cure to osteobucomyelitis. And of course, Universal Health Systems is crushing that.
Right.
And then Big Entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Which is the Rod Reuter guys. Yes. They're now in monopoly, and they're the main stockholders of Universal Health Systems. So they hate Smart Patrol, and they're burying all the Smart Patrol's music because they are the monopolistic purveyors of content. So they can stop them. This would be like now if it was, digital, like you wouldn't find them on Spotify. You couldn't find them, right? They're verboten. But back then it was different. It was just they were just killing distribution, and so you think you get the whole idea. You think, oh, okay, here's the good guys, here's the bad guys, and all it takes is for Lifeforms Unlimited to be able to get this cure to the public, and everything's going to be great, right? And of course, what they do is the lead singer of the Smart Patrol, who I guess is the Mark character, he gets osteobucomyelitis. So they're forced to give him the experimental cure because it's not legal. So they give him this simple cure, and it has unforeseen side effects. And this is way before Awakenings. And here's the side effects. When he comes out of it, not only has he got all his function back, but he's physically transformed into a leading man-looking guy like Warren Beatty.
Wow.
So the lead character in the second part of the movie is not who you've been looking at.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Isn't it?
Love it.
And he turns his back on the Smart Patrol and their outsider message,
right,
and their fight against Universal Health Systems and Big Entertainment. He becomes a Las Vegas crooner like Michael Bublé. He's pretty much like that guy.
That's amazing.
Here's more of what's like Awakenings, is that he starts to regress. It starts to undo itself. And he comes crawling back to the Smart Patrol with attrition, and begging them to take him back, and he was wrong, and they're going to fight again. Because in fact, this brilliant cure from LFU doesn't really work. It's temporary. And in the meantime, Universal Health Systems has bought that cure, has usurped it, right? Compromised it, taken it, making a mockery of it to make money from it. And they know that it doesn't work. So I was thinking pretty sophisticatedly back then.
Yeah, that's amazing, Jerry. It's so funny you talk about the Warren Beatty, good-looking human. And when I was a kid and I saw Whip It, one of the brilliant things I thought about it was the casting of the beautiful people in it.
Yeah.
the cowboys and the women. I don't know how you directed them to be so upsetting and beautiful at the same time. Was it hard to cast things like this and get people to understand?
No, not at all. Because we were always using people, and I maybe I should be guilty, but we were using them. We
Right.
were just we were taking non-actors and wannabe actors who were really proud of themselves and encouraging them to just do what they thought was cool,
Right.
rather than saying, no, 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 that's too much. Or, oh, no, no, that's ridiculous. But yeah, do that again. Oh, no, do it bigger, right?
Oh,
The two male actors were waiters that wanted to be male actors. They were
right.
constantly auditioning in Hollywood, but they were really bad actors. Yeah.
The scene where she pops the beer and he's grabbing her arm and it's spilling and she's pouting.
Yeah.
I just was like, I don't know. It just, again, it was like a lightning bolt. There's all this other stuff going on. It is a beautiful looking piece of film. It's just, the colors are so saturated. The skyline you have, the fake house, the straw. It's a really beautiful film.
And John Zabrucki, my good friend that I told you about that started Modern Props, that moved out of Kent and went to LA 4 years earlier than me, he was the set designer on that.
And so I've been watching a lot of videos of you explaining the video at the time to, the local newscaster of the town you're playing in.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because they're like, you're kind of explaining that it's not about S&M or
Right.
masturbation, but
And it bums them out. Like, what? What's done about S&M? Don't ruin it for me.
it was incredible. And I just wanted to know, the Freedom of the Choice tour audiences are getting bigger. You have songs on the charts. The album is selling really well. And you're still putting things in like Boogie Boy's head getting smashed. It's like, and do you remember the reaction of like, everybody's been through this concert, which I think was so amazing how you guys, especially for Freedom of Choice, you're, very static at first and very limited in your motion. And then it just keeps pushing to the front of the stage, And then you're in the audience. And then you go off stage for the encore. And the film comes up of General Boy and Boogie Boy playing in an industrial factory, and he gets his head smashed, and him getting that Band-Aid pulled off with the blood squirting out of his reversed mask. Do you remember like standing backstage and hearing the reaction from the audience? Because I'm sure a lot of people were coming to your show at this point, not really knowing what de-evolution was or about your early records. Would you remember that at all?
Well, certainly. I mean, we were having fun, to be honest, and we knew how ludicrous it was. Again, hearkening back to our antecedents to these low budget art films, right? Where we're not asking anybody to believe the Boogie Boy's head is crushed in this thing, right? It's ludicrous. It's so badly done, because that's all you could do is do it badly, like these B movies,
Right.
where it's completely fake and everybody knows it, but it's hilarious, right? But
Yeah.
nonetheless, because of the content of what you're telling them, it's still disturbing, right? And grotesque.
And it was slow. It was like you took your time pulling those bandages off. It wasn't like, oh my God. Yeah. There was a visceral feeling.
Cuts. No,
not at all. One cut kind of had almost a Derek Jarman feel. Like it just really upsetting, real hospital feel, very lonely.
Really rubbing your nose in it.
Yeah. Which I thought was so incredible at a stage where so many bands would have been like, all right, we need to put our foot off the pedal a bit with this. And instead, I really feel like for the next, especially for Freedom of Choice and New Traditionalists, it was really in your face in terms of the videos you were doing.
Yeah. And again, that came from those days of watching those underground art movies, right? Of the
Right.
Kuchar brothers and Sandy Nelson and stuff like The Sadist, uh, which
Oh
was
yeah.
called Profile in Terror.
Archibald Jr.
I am hurt and I will hurt others. Where it's like, okay, these teachers in LA are driving to a Dodgers game and they got an exchange student with them and they have car trouble and they pull up and what they pulled up to really still existed when I first came to LA. These little, like, you know, outposts in the outside the city that were kind of rural with two gas pumps and a
Right.
house, right? And a convenience store inside.
Yeah, the person comes out to help you through the screen door.
Yeah, it was real. And it was easy to understand. And I love it when and then they pull up there and then the whole rest of the movie happens right there.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
there's no money. And there's a junkyard conveniently that they use right there. And you know who shot that, right?
I don't know who shot the sadist. No.
One of the greatest cinematographers of the last 40 years, Vilmos Zsigmond. And it was his first American film when he escaped the communist bullshit going on,
Uh-huh.
right? In the 60s with Czechoslovakia and everything. He came over and he knew everything about the camera. He could put a camera together. He could take it apart. He could change
Right.
everything. He could explain. So it's like a mechanic that could build a car and race it, right?
Right.
And but because he was from where he was, they relegated him to like the dregs. Like, okay, you can work over here. And so he worked with Archibald Jr., and that was his first movie that he shot.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that film. I love it. God too, and all that. I just,
It's all about the cinematography, really, if you think about
I wanted to ask. We talked briefly about Club Devo, and I ordered stuff from Club Devo. I even got a check back once, a refund check, because I couldn't get the leisure suits.
it.
What was that self-managed? What was Club Devo in terms of reality?
It was one room downstairs from our manager, Elliot Roberts' offices on Sunset Boulevard and Doheny. And we had to hire a guy to try to fulfill things because you have to understand everything we made, we paid for because it was merchandise companies didn't do anything but t-shirts with 8x10 designs on them.
Right.
So everything that you were getting was custom.
It was amazing, Jerry.
And no merchandiser would pay for the hats. They wouldn't pay for the vests, right? They
Yeah.
wouldn't pay for the pompadours. I was finding all these sources of manufacturing with my friend John Zabrucki to make the hats, the pompadours,
Yeah.
all of it. Yeah, so we were losing money.
You guys made it so reasonable too. I mean, it was like my first art purchases, I felt like. I could scrape up a little bit of money and really cheaply get something that was an artifact for the
Yeah.
first time in my life.
Yeah, and believe me, so cheap that we were losing money.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, because we had to pay for the manufacturing, and then we had to store them in this room, the inventory, and we had to hire a guy to fulfill the deals, right?
Right.
So that's what was going on.
I would love to talk to you about the trio of videos that you made for New Traditionalists, Through Being Cool, Love Without Anger, Beautiful World. I feel like those three are very high watermarks for the films you directed.
I'm glad you mentioned Beautiful World because to me, that is for me the most satisfying thing I ever did in terms of a video.
It's incredible. When you made stuff like this, it was an interesting time because, I was a runner-up in the MTV Hawaiian Devo Holiday Contest, right? MTV was, you were in their language a bit. I mean, these Beautiful World was on a lot at this
Yeah.
point. Did you ever, when you made something like this that was so powerful, was this still a period where you felt like we can make what we want and we can say what we want?
Well, we foolishly thought that was true.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't.
Also, you're making a video that has all this archival footage in it at a
Right.
time where you can't, like now you can go online and just look up all sorts of stuff. You'd be like, all right, a car wreck over here, a fire over here, civil unrest. How did you source all of that material in this film?
Yeah, the way you did that back then, there were well, by the way, it was affordable. You could go now and find everything 10 times quicker than I found things where I had to spend weeks finding it.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck's help. But you could afford it. Now you can find it like that. And then to get the rights, if you want to make commercial use of it, watch
Right.
out. So that video cost $25,000, which at the time seemed exorbitantly crazy in 1981. And I'm sure we could extrapolate to now what $25,000 in 1981 means. But we had to go to all these archival film houses, and you have to sign in, then you have to pay to be there per hour.
Wow.
Then you go through all their microfiche and card catalogs, right? And you select what you want to see, and you go to a desk and you turn that in. They bring it to you, then you screen it, you view it in these little viewers, and you note the frames, and you have to buy a minimum of something like 100 feet or 200 feet.
Wow.
So you note frame one, and then you go back and you turn in that list, and then you go back the next day and they give you a work print of that stuff that you selected. So you're paying by those increments, right?
Right.
Big deal. And then you take these work prints and then you cut your piece and then you present it to them so that they can determine the final amount you're going to pay for usage.
Okay. Wow.
And it was like being an academic. I mean, we went to 3 different archival film houses. There was no Getty Images. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what's the other big one now? The huge one? I don't know. They're actually bigger than Getty Images, where they scooped it all up. They figured it out. Wait a minute. All these artsy people, they're using all this shit. We're just going to own it all. Fuck that. Right?
Right. Did you have images in mind, like a list of what you were looking for?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had a plan. It was, and believe it or not, it was inspired loosely by Bonnie and Clyde, where Bonnie and Clyde, which was a movie I really loved,
Yeah.
given how old I was when it came out, how it started so silly, like a typical like heist movie and cops and robbers.
It's a romp.
And then it went super dark.
Yes. Yes. The video does that beautifully.
That's what I wanted to do. I thought, that's it. We'll just start silly, like they expect DEVO to be silly. Here's all these silly people doing stupid things in the past they can laugh at, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, where they can feel superior, like, oh, yeah, we're so far beyond that now. We wouldn't do anything that dumb, right?
Right.
And then it's
At this point, some of your stuff was shot on video. This was shot on film. Were
Mhm.
you editing this on like flatbeds still at this point with like grease
Oh, yeah.
pencils?
Oh, yeah.
Like, were you renting out places in LA to do that as well?
There was a place, well, I mean, no, actually what we did, we were still working with Chuck's editor, Dale Cooper, who, you know, was just traditional film editor. And DEVO had a rehearsal studio. So we set up in a corner of the rehearsal studio, his editing bay and the racks to hang the film on, and we did it there. But we couldn't have afforded it otherwise. I mean, was labor intensive. This went on for weeks and weeks.
I can only imagine. It's an incredible high watermark on any film by anyone in any genre. So yeah, you should be incredibly proud of it. It's incredible.
No, I loved how it turned out, and it withstands the test of time. And
Yes.
yeah, couldn't happen without me seeing all those uh, great art movies from the late '60s out of New York and
Yeah.
Berkeley and San Francisco, including Bruce Connors, who was very good at archival film and
Yes, that's right.
approached us because of what we had done, and he saw our videos. Approached us in San Francisco at the Mabuhay Gardens and wanted to do a film to Mongoloid,
Right.
and so we got together and watched a bunch of footage that he presented us with. He flew down to L.A. to this hotel. It was just a motel at the time that all the stewardesses stayed in. And it was on Ocean Boulevard near Pico and Santa Monica. And we had a great evening with him. And the thing that sold me was he showed me the piece of footage that ended up in the film where it was a commercial, actually. And again, how could you afford this today? How could you get the rights today? It was a commercial about asthma where this businessman in an office building in New York has got a problem, and he's like struggling to breathe, and then suddenly a suitcase closes around him, flies through the air, opens in Palm Springs, California, and he is in a lounge chair in a Hawaiian shirt, sunglasses, and a straw hat, breathing free. And it was incredible, black and white. It was incredible.
Wow. It's like tailor made.
I mean, it took me back to doing acid. When I saw that
Yes.
sequence, it's like, oh my God. We laughed so hard.
The people that wanted to work with Devo or you got to work with, like you said, Bruce Connor, Timothy Leary, Neil Young. Bowie, yeah. Were you like outside of yourself, or were you feeling like, yeah, of course, we're in the conversation. We deserve to be taken seriously as artists.
I'll be honest. As much as it vindicated everything that I had been a field marshal for and believing in and refusing to give up on, right? As much as it vindicated that, when it happened, I guess I was arrogant enough to think we deserved this. In other words, it wasn't surprising. These were the people that I wanted to have respect from and wanted to get it, right? And they were getting it. And I thought, of course, right? We don't care about all the assholes that hate us, but if David Bowie had hated us, or Brian Eno had hated us, or Neil Young, or Dean Stockwell, or Tony Basil had thought we were stupid, I would have been devastated. It would have been over. But when they didn't think so, I thought, yeah, I knew it. That's
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course. That's great.
well, I mean, I knew what I was doing.
Obviously, I mean, your live shows and the film work, I felt were just hand in hand. You always had kind of an intermission. It would change into a different type of visual orchestration that you were going to play with. And, by the time you got to Oh No, It's Devo, where the first half of the show is all rear projection, which I can't even imagine the technology you were dealing with back then.
How crude and how difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you even do that?
I'll tell you how we did it. We had a 35 millimeter soundtrack dubber that we had dumped all our sequencer lines onto as we mixed in the studio, so that given which take we used for the record, we would have a dupe of it on 35 mag sound. Then we synced that to a rear projection screen that at the time was the big deal. They were using it in conventions, apparently, not in rock and roll, but they were using it with a right angle mirror lens that required a short throw for a big image. So if you wanted rear projection on a stage and standing in front of it, you had to hire this company, Background Engineers, the only game in town. So we would play to the sequencer lines being pumped through our monitors off the 35 millimeter mag sound dubber that was synced to the 16 millimeter right angle lens mirror projector that only required 10 feet of throw to produce an image 17 feet high and 25 feet wide. And that's what we were standing in front of. And that's what we were playing to. Can you imagine how it was so expensive? And we had to bring those units on tour that weighed hundreds and hundreds of pounds with a four crew team.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was your crew like? How did you find people who got it?
We had 3 semis. I mean, now obviously it's all on a laptop.
Yeah, I know. It was so impressive. And the show I saw, it worked seamlessly. I'm sure there were, obviously there are shows where it didn't, but it was so radical to me as an audience member. And now, of course, like you said, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's so easy. Anybody can do it.
Right.
And yeah, creating that content and syncing it is like grade school. Boom. And it's all off of a laptop, and you have the LED screens, and they're everywhere, and the promoter pays for them. We were being screwed. We couldn't even make any money on those tours,
Right.
because we were showing people something that nobody was doing. And then, of course, the other thing was, yes, I was orchestrating a show, like arranging that show so that it got devolved. In other words, it got more and more primal, like you were explaining earlier about it being more and more in your face, where you're ending up with like Jocko Homo and going into the audience and stripping off the clothing, where it all starts very tech and very cool and controlled. Yes. And it was again, proof of concept. It's like, we're talking about de-evolution. We're going to show you de-evolution.
Absolutely.
And as we show you de-evolution, you're going to get more and more excited the more devolved it becomes.
Yeah, often 2 times a night. I was like, how are they doing a 7 o'clock show and a 10 o'clock show? I was like,
yeah, I remember that.
Oh my God. I don't know how you guys did that.
I don't know how I did it when I think about it, because it was so physical.
Totally physical. Yeah, you guys were hanging off stuff. I remember a show where Mark, during Jocko Homo, disappeared off stage, and then he was all of a sudden in the balcony, climbs down the rope, and you're like,
yeah,
what? Like, what's going on? I mean, you guys, yeah, and still are a live force. Incredible. I also wanted to know, with the That's Good video with the donut and the French fry imagery, was that the first time that
MTV?
MTV had censored imagery of DEVO?
Yeah.
That must have just been ludicrous after all the stuff they were pushing in terms of sex on that channel.
Well, and that was just a mere year and a half after they came to us and begged us for our videos, because we had 5 videos, and they were going to launch MTV in 3 cities in the United States, and they had no content. I think they had, maybe at that time, they had Video Killed the Radio Star, and they had a Rod Stewart video, and they were about to get this David Bowie Ashes to Ashes video, but
okay,
DEVO had 5.
Yes.
Right? And they go, we can't pay you guys anything. That's not what we're about. We're going to make you big stars, right? And we're thinking, this is, we're vindicated. It's like,
yeah,
everybody go, why are you making these films? What are you going to do with them? Why are you doing this? It's like, here we go.
Yeah.
We were right. It's happening. And they showed them all. They showed them all over and over until they went national the next year.
Okay.
Franchise with American Express money. And that's when they tied their video playlist to the top 40 AOR station playlist. Because before then they were saying, no, this is about video music. This is revolutionary. We're just showing the best video music, right? No, they were just showing radio hits. And then that's when the whole industry started with these directors that were basically commercial directors
Sure.
that were just doing whatever they had to do to take this group and give them a video. And the groups weren't into it. The groups didn't understand it. And you saw over and over, it's okay, there's a pissed off, beautiful girl, and she's throwing a vase down, and it breaks in slow motion, and the
Yes.
rose is on the floor, and she's riding a white horse. And it's like, this over and over, it was like there's a formula, right? In DEVO, we were making our own story. We were
Yes.
showing our own narrative, and we weren't hiring directors to impose an idea on us. We had the fucking ideas,
Yeah.
and now here we were being like dissed and censored. Like, I can't remember the video commissioner's name at the time.
Video commissioner. That the fact that there was somebody that, oh my God.
Oh yeah, I still remember the calls though. It's like, okay, we got your video. I go, hey, great. What'd you think? He goes, not gonna fly. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, you know what I'm talking about, Casale. I go, what? He goes, French fry going through the donut, and then the girl with a satisfied look on her face. He says, you can have the French fry, you can have the donut, but you can't have the girl with this look on her face, right?
Incredible.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Video Man. That is just,
boy, you can't fool him. He was like a federal agent.
what was it like transitioning into making videos for other bands like the Cars and Foo Fighters? Was that satisfying at all?
Some of it was because at least at that time, and because of my own experience with DEVO, I knew what I was in for. It isn't like I was naive anymore. But what was nice is at that time, you got hired for your ideas with music videos. Like, you wrote the idea, and that's why you got hired. And sometimes you would actually be allowed to follow through with that idea. Now, as the budgets got bigger, that became less and less true because all the gatekeepers are weighing in, and the manager's weighing in, and the lead singer's girlfriend's weighing in. And suddenly, the thing that they hired you to do because of your brilliant writing, you're not doing that. And if you don't suffer the fools gladly, that gets around. Like,
Right.
oh, he's resistive, man. He wouldn't go with our ideas,
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible because I mean, all you have to do is look at your body of work, and it's just like, just let you do what you do.
You would think that's why they'd hire me, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
and again, there's ones that I did that. I mean, as sad as it was, the Soundgarden,
Mhm.
it turned out to be their last video, and I was oblivious to the politics until I walked into the middle of it. But you could tell that they weren't talking to each other anymore, and they each had their own dressing room, and they each had their own handler, and they only came out for the shots, for the scene, and then would go back with no communication. But they didn't change the idea on that one.
Yeah.
I had a big budget, and they showed up, and they cooperated. They were all very nice and very smart. And we shot every scene that was on my storyboard.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a rarity. Well, I want to talk about what you're working on now. I still don't understand how you made this 4D lounge version
right.
of
Yeah, I'm going to pay you back the lounge version. Yeah.
right. So
I call it I'm going to lounge you back.
right. And I read about what is going on, like with the 4D
Yeah.
volumetric capture system. And But can you tell me what the hell is going on? Like how you're making this? What's new about it?
Well, you don't get to see what's new about it, unfortunately, because once again, the people in charge of these technologies and the people they give money to on these technologies are oftentimes, like Elon Musk, also a loose cannon out of their minds. And this company, 4D Fun, I can't even characterize them, but compared to what we were able to get out there as a kind of teaser, they have all the data and media they need to create the real promised experience of the company that they are that got funded, which is an immersive world that you go into with your Oculus headset or your new
Okay.
Apple Pro app, and you can determine what you look at, when you look at it, walk around in it, walk right up to anybody like me on a pedestal singing "I'm Gonna Pay You Back" or Josh Freese drumming, the dancers,
The Devil in the Dome.
the devil. Yeah, oh, there's a whole thing going on in there,
Okay.
which you didn't get to see at all. Which I see they shot all the media for it. It's all there,
Right.
but I have no idea what they're doing. I'm not privy to their business, but whatever their business model was, I think it got, you know, sidetracked, hijacked, whatever. I think they wasted a lot of funds.
Okay.
Okay. And yet, if somebody would take what's already created, they could create the media experience that this company promised. But all you're seeing there is a kind of a 2D like demo of what one user might do with a drone camera if they were walking through it.
Right. It's like a select of the experience.
Yeah. It's so sad because what I saw in demonstrations there at 4D Studios when I put on the headset and I was in environments they'd created, it almost makes you sick to your stomach because you're not, it's like a motion sickness on a boat. You're not sure where you are. You're in there
Right.
for real. And you're looking for the ground, like, are my feet touching the ground? I don't know. It's incredible. I mean, it's definitely a drug experience, no doubt about it, And I can see in a world now that is so devolved and so off-putting and so run by tyrants and fascists, which you're about to see come down in America in the fall, that what would a young person who's creative and smart do? They'd stay in their room and go into an alternate reality, wouldn't they? They'd go into a completely immersive 3D world that isn't the horrible world that they have to live in with no sustainable health care, no freedom, terrible food, morons like Trump. I mean, we need it more than ever because just like surrealism in the 20s as an answer to the horrors and trauma of World War I, we need this now.
I never thought things would get this devolved.
Well, either did we, to be honest. I've always been an acolyte, a worshiper of film. Films changed my life, I think, as much as Bob Dylan changed my life and the Velvet Underground. I think seeing films like Island of Lost Souls and The Day the Earth Stood Still and
Sure.
Sweet Smell of Success and A Face in the Crowd.
Yes.
This really cheesy English film, Espresso Bongo.
Oh, yeah. I had that at the video store.
Yeah, with Lawrence Harvey and Cliff Richards. I think that was 1959. Like Village of the Damned, 1960. Dr. Strangelove. I still remember seeing that right after, on the heels of Kennedy getting assassinated. It's one of the first films I went to see after being walking around traumatized from that assassination. what a brilliant film. And it doesn't even age
Yes.
because it nailed the evil and darkness and flawed nature of human nature.
Well, so did your films, Jerry. I mean, what an incredible body of work. They've aged beautifully. I know so many people who have been influenced by them, haunted by them, and DEVO changed my life. There's my life before DEVO, and there's my life after DEVO. And I applied so much of what you were showing me to the world.
BD and AD instead of BC and AD.
Exactly.
I mean, BC and AD. Well, I mean, that's one of the nicest things you could say, because that gives me a sense that we didn't fail. If we actually changed people's lives and inspired them and took other creative people that were disenfranchised and feeling hopeless and gave them a new rudder to look at things, to move forward. I mean, that's what we were trying to do. We were kind of educators.
Absolutely. And I still love an action figure. There are still DEVO things to buy and cherish and hold. I mean, you have your own figure now that has like the action vest and a authentic spud gun. And I'll put a link in the show notes where people can get that from Jerry directly. But at the end of every episode, I ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on the body of work we're talking about or the films. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how many tons of love do you give the body of work of Jerry Casale?
Oh,
1 ton to 10 tons.
Okay, well, again, with the tip of the iceberg analogy, I have to say that compared to what I wanted to do and wanted to achieve, 7 is the highest I could go.
Amazing. Well, I have 10 here, but that's from a bunch of spuds running around my feet right now, screaming at me. Jerry, this is so meaningful to me. You're one of my heroes, and I thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday. We are a completely independently produced affair, so the best way to support us is to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app and to subscribe to our Patreon over at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get exclusive weekly bonus episodes every Sunday, as well as one-of-a-kind handmade Revolutions Per Movie goods that I send out to you. You can follow the show on social media at Revolutions Per Movie and find more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!